G'day. How did the F1 drivers get to the Red Bull Ring for the recent Austrian Grand Prix? There were helicopters, private jets, modest road cars, SUVs, and some high-end supercars. The Red Bull Ring is situated in such a beautiful part of the world. Driving to the track is absolutely stunning, with mountains on either side of a beautiful freeway, but some of the drivers took private jets. Let's have a look at Max Verstappen. He flew his private jet in on Thursday, but he was late. And that meant he had a real rush to ensure he made the press conference in time for him not to get a fine. Now, obviously, he needed a car from the airport to the track. And what was he in? He was in a Ford Mustang Mach-E GT. Now, I was curious as to how long it would take to charge one of these cars. And if you just charge it by a standard 3-pin plug at home, it's going to be in the order of about 33 hours. But if you go to a supercharger, you'll get it from 20% up to 80% in about 30 minutes. Sergio Perez was driving the exact same vehicle, and this vehicle has popped up at a number of tracks this year because, of course, Ford is involved with Red Bull from 2025 onwards. 40% of the cars driven by the F1 drivers this race weekend were from one manufacturer. That manufacturer was Mercedes-Benz, and the GLE 63S was the vehicle of choice for both of the McLaren drivers, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. Lando, in particular, has driven large cars almost all year. He often has 3 and 4 people he needs to get into the track, and it's done comfortably in a vehicle such as this. But I'm going to have money on the fact that he'll arrive in his McLaren at the next race, the British Grand Prix. He's done it repeatedly, and I think he'll probably bring in a family member. Oh, and by the way, we had his brother at the track last weekend, Oliver Norris, who is a fine young man, actually sells simulators to racing drivers. And on the subject of McLarens, will Zach Brown be driving his Speedtail? I think he will, and it's always a pleasure to see a car of that magnitude in the driver's car park. At the British Grand Prix, Oscar Piastri was driving a Mercedes GLE 63S, and he had one of Quadlock's new action camera kits in the car. This allows you to attach an action camera to almost anything. Select the base, arm, action camera head, or attach their action camera adapter to any of Quadlock's mounts, and voila, stable footage of anything. Quadlock provides the most convenient and secure mounting system for smartphones and cameras, whether that be for a car, boat, motorbike, or even just for everyday adventures. For someone like me who's always filming and travelling a lot, I can't tell you how much easier Quadlock has made my life. With their mad-compatible wallet, battery pack, and selfie stick. Oh, and if you're prone to touching your phone while driving, you'll want one of these so you can drive hands-free. 3 different and compact options, a windscreen suction mount, vent, and adhesive mount allow me to easily attach my phone. Just twist and lock it in place. You'll find a link in the description below, or just head to quadlockcase.net. Let's go to the Haas cars now, and Nico Hülkenberg was in a Mercedes GLC, as was Kevin Magnussen. Now, I didn't spot them coming into the track because there are 2 entrances to the paddock. The far entrance, which is right next to the Haas motorhome, was so convenient for the drivers so that their trainers would be driving their cars, they dropped them off at that gate, then the trainer would park the car down in the car park next to the main entry. Let me next talk about Lewis Hamilton. Came in all 4 days in this Mercedes AMG EQE 43, and on Sunday we saw his car come into the car park driven by one of his security guys, and there was no one in the back seat. We could clearly see that there were no heads through the windows, so we figured he wasn't in there, but it turns out he was. So I figure he's either leant over to grab something perhaps off the floor of the car, or he's being a little bit tricky and lying down in the back so we wouldn't see. As it turns out, he was late too that day. He had a commitment at the fan zone. George had already gone over there, and they were just waiting for Lewis, so he jumped out of the car and got straight into the vehicle that takes the drivers over to the fan zone. And he wasn't the only driver to do that morning. I'll come to the second driver in just a moment. But his teammate George Russell was in a GLE 63S. This is a vehicle that sells in the US for around about 130,000 United States dollars. But if you didn't see Fernando Alonso's reel on Sunday night, George was actually on the same flight as Fernando and I think a couple of other drivers. He rolled up late because he had a whole lot of media to do, and they waited for him, and he rolled up with a large bottle of Ferrari Trento to celebrate with the gentleman on the flight, although Fernando Alonso does not drink, has never drunk. And I'm pretty sure that the bottle in question was the one in this wooden crate here. Pierre Gasly was flying the company colours, rolling up in a Renault Espace, which they have arrived in a few times this year, and it has this Alpine livery on it. I spotted his mum, Pascal, at the track this weekend. She was with a friend. Dad not there. He was out, I believe, on race day having lunch with some friends. And Esteban Ocon was driving the same car too. He was staying very close to the track. I'm figuring no more than about a 4-minute drive for him. He was in one of those motorhomes that you might have seen reviewed on my video last week, which was a huge video. So thank you to you if you've watched that video already. And I did notice too that a number of cars were dropped off on the Thursday for the drivers to then use going to and from the track, even though it's only a short distance. And come Sunday night after the race, we often see some of those cars that we're talking about here still in the driver's car park, because the drivers are ushered to a private airport, perhaps for their private flights, and somebody else comes and picks up those rental cars or company cars. Let me talk about Ferrari now. Both drivers driving the exact same model. Roma Spiders, the Spider being the soft top, and I was delighted to see that Carlos actually made use of that soft top ability on the Sunday when he drove in to the green carpet. Now, the green carpet is an area a bit like the Melbourne Walk, where fans queue up from the very early hours, and all the well, no, it's not actually all, it's only most of the drivers walk along that path and are more than happy to sign and pose for selfies. And who was the person that spent the longest? From what I saw, it was Oscar Piastri. If I go back a number of years ago, Lewis Hamilton rolled up on his motorcycle, signed a couple of autographs, and then took off at speed around the back to the driver's car park. But I haven't seen Lewis in a motorcycle at that track for a couple of years now. His teammate was in, well, not the same colour, but gee, it's not too far off it, is it? These are the two out in the driver's car park. And Charles was indeed the one that I referred to earlier on. Like Lewis, was late one morning, jumped out of the car and gave that to one of his crew to park in the driver's car park while he jumped in this van for a brief visit to the fan zone. Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso were two more drivers who went to the far swipe gates, and as such, I don't think I got any shots of them arriving at the track, because you can't cover both gates. They're simply too far apart. So most of the photographers would just cover that main swipe gate at the centre of the paddock. Oh, and the other thing, standing where we stood to photograph drivers coming into the driver's car park, we could see up on the hill this gorgeous Eurocopter. This actually has a camera on the front and is used quite extensively over the weekend, and being run by the Flying Bulls, which is the owner of it, it is branded accordingly with Red Bull. Did I see any drivers getting out of that? No. Not to say it didn't happen, but I just have no photographic evidence of it. Last year, the Alfa Romeo drivers drove in Alfa Romeos. But this year, with their change to Audi next year, the stake drivers are in Audis, and a Q7 was the vehicle of choice for Zhou Guanyu, and that vehicle was built and probably still is built in Bratislava. Now, I'm not far from that right now. I think I'm about a 45-minute drive from that city. And that Q7 was one of the vehicles involved in the Volkswagen emissions scandal, where the company had to buy back some of the affected cars. Not only that, the Q7 was subject of hundreds of complaints, with many relating to potentially catastrophic engine failure issues and a class action lawsuit relating to squealing brakes. Bit of a colourful backstory, but trust that's all sorted out now. It is the second largest car in the Audi range, and the largest was driven by Valtteri Bottas. Well, no, it was actually driven by his people, because Valtteri chooses to ride a bike. And once again, because his hospitality suite was at the far end of the paddock, I never saw him come in once. There are just 4 drivers left to go, and I'll throw in my car that I drove this weekend. I had a Peugeot 2008. That's not the year it was built, that's the model number, and I thought it was quite good. It's a nice drive from Vienna Airport to the track, along pretty smooth roads and through some lovely countryside, and the cruise control was a treat. Maniac! Alex Albon next in an E200D Mercedes, and he parked it a lot better than he parked last race weekend in Barcelona, where David Coulthard made this comment.
Yep, you're right, Logan Sargent. Making contact without even being on track.
Anyway, good that we sorted that out in Austria. And Logan was in a Merc that does 0 to 100 in a leisurely 6 seconds, a Mercedes C220D. That leaves me with just 2 drivers, Yuki Tsunoda in a Honda Civic Type R, yeah, it's the standard, and Daniel Ricciardo in exactly the same car. But will he be driving a Honda in Britain? I think not. I've seen him a couple of times roll up in his 720S McLaren out there, and despite the fact that that car is from a competing racing team, my money is on him rolling up to the track in that, with the roof off, if it's going to be nice, although I've just seen the forecast and it's just saying 18 to 20 degrees the max on all of the days, and a 50% chance of rain on one day. Now, I'm excited about what cars the drivers will be driving to the British Grand Prix next race. But I'm equally as excited for that race because Brad Pitt brings all of his crew back for the F1 movie, and they'll be filming a lot of segments there. The release date of the movie has been confirmed too. It's July 25. And hopefully, because that's a Wednesday night, hopefully there's a launch in Vienna on that night so that we can all go and view the movie and then go to the track later that night for Media Day on the Thursday. Just about everybody in Formula One is super excited about having a look at this movie. Now, before we leave, please hit the like button and subscribe for those of you who haven't done so already, and I think that's about half of you. And for a whole lot of extra content and merchandise, have a look here. Thanks for watching and stay passionate. That doesn't make sense.